the whole report's available on, I assume, your website. If you just Google Grow Green, isn't it? So for anyone who wants any ideas about if you're thinking about moving away to a different food production, or if you want ideas on.
Yeah, sure. If people are interested in land management and what we're saying about land management, go and check out our website, Vegan Society Campaigns Grow Green. We've got a number of reports actually. So we've done a couple on we did one on pulses and one on the kind of land management change as part of our climate response. And our most recent one, the Alternatives to Commercial Grazing report, that's more practical. That's directed at farmers, landowners, and people involved in land management. Because obviously one of the things that we come up against quite frequently is farmers and farming groups who'll say, look, I hear what you're saying, but there's nothing else I can do with my land. You know, I'm a hill farmer or whatever, or my soils aren't suitable for arable cropping. So you know,
that's one of the problems we have on our farm. So we've got a chicken farm for eggs, and one of the problems we have is basically the soil's too, well, we think at least, maybe it's not, but we think it's too rocky and it's too windy to really do much else. I mean, you would be fairly hard struck to put some arable crops on it, certainly traditional arable crops. We've only got a small amount of land, so buying the machinery for that is going to be a massive cost. And you could rent it out, I suppose, but we've also got an agricultural tag on it. So we have to be producing something on a relatively small farm with relatively rocky, very windy. It's called Four Winds. So, I mean, it shows you the sort of topography you're working with. I did want to set up an orchard there, but as I say, I mean, this year, didn't we have, was it Storm Dennis or something? We just looked at it and it was, I mean, we have about like 3 apple trees or something out there. And if that had been our livelihood, we would have had, you know, hardly any crops to deal with at the end because all the blossom would have just been blown off. As it happens, actually, one of them did quite well because it was sheltered from the wind. So I'm assuming that the bees all just went to that one after the others were just destroyed. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we have. And then risking, you know, the money to be putting into a new form of farming is I don't know, it's certainly not easy to plan for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what the report's about in a way. It's kind of acknowledging that there are those challenges there and that there are risks associated with, you know, with changing land use and changing the form of production. But that, you know, so for example, like you said, at orchard, one of the things we'd like to see is more nut trees, more fruit trees in general, but more nut trees. It may not even if it's, you know, even if it is possible, it may not be a good idea to convert, you know, pasture land to arable land. We don't want to be ploughing up more land than we need to. And in fact, that's not something that we would support from a kind of climate perspective or biodiversity perspective. But there are other forms of production like, you know, like nut forests and like fruit production. So, but they can be challenging for farmers because obviously you've got a long time before you can, you know, there's risk involved. You've got a long time before you're actually cropping anything that's going to cover your costs. So I think, yeah, we also do policy work, and we've been pushing for changes in agricultural subsidies. I think some of the stuff coming along down the line with the LMS scheme will potentially support that because it's just another mechanism to support things like biodiversity on the farm.
So what was the LMS?
The ELMS scheme. So the
Environmental scheme, Land Management Scheme, which is, so can you just explain that briefly, people who don't know? So this is also one of the things I was going to pick up on later is between the BPS, which is Basic Payment Scheme, and the Environmental Land Management Schemes. Because, so you've just said there, you're pushing or going, what do they call it? You're pushing in for new policies under the ELM scheme to do what there?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not necessarily under ELMS, but perhaps around it in addition to it. So other agricultural policies that would support farmers who are taking that risk and transitioning and, you know, making changes in the land use. But I think there's some, you know, we'll have to monitor and see how the ELMS, the ELMS scheme kind of pans out. But I think there's some potential there because it's payments for environmental benefits. You've got other options for receiving money on farm. So things like nut trees, for example, there are existing carbon capture schemes, but hopefully they'll, you'll get payments for that sort of thing, because you're capturing carbon on farm, more carbon on farm than you would be with just pasture. So hopefully that will open up new funding streams and change the incentives slightly around farming and land management. As you said, just to give a quick overview, the subsidy system that farmers currently have been interacting with in the UK is the European Common Agricultural Policy and the basic payment scheme for that. Most of the payments through that scheme come just for keeping land or owning land or managing land in agricultural condition, whether that be arable or animal farming. Whereas this is intended to switch that so that payments are coming just for on-farm environmental benefits, and that's the main support mechanism. So
that's the is that the one with the mantra about public money for public goods?
Exactly, yeah.
That's
Public
one,
money,
yeah.
public goods. So, depending on exactly, it's going to take a long time to implement that. So depending on exactly how that's structured, we'll have to see how it changes the incentives around land management and farmers in particular, whether they will be incentivized to move to what we see as being more sustainable forms of land management.